Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, if you are just joining us, you're at the right place at the right time. This is your favorite program, Early Exchange, where we shape policy and advance development with our conversation. We started today's conversation by looking at the revenue to debt service ratio, which, according to Minister of Finance, it has improved. And now let's look at our big story. One of our big stories for today. We're supposed to look at the role of sport when it comes to sustainable development goals, but we're going to leave that till another day because we're looking at the mood of the nation. And if you are conversant with what is happening in Nigeria now, it has to do with a protest, what we'll call the End Bad Governance protest, which is taking place right now as we speak. The protest started yesterday, August 1st, and Nigerians in their numbers, they came out to express their discomfort about governance and the state of the nation. So we're going to look at the demands from the protesters. We're going to look at the impact of these on businesses. And we're also going to give you an update as regards day two. We learned that protesters are gathering in their numbers at various nooks and crannies of the nation to also kickstart the protest as slated for today. Don't forget you can be part of this conversation. This is an opportunity for you to give us a first-hand account of what is happening wherever you are, whatever your location. Just go to our social media platform, all our social media platform at SOUQ News TV to give us an account of what is happening in your location. But we're going to start the conversation from our correspondent Kayode, who is on the feed now, who switched to Kayode, who is joining us from Lagos. Kayode, can you just give us an update? Tell us where you are, the location where you are precisely, and give us an update of what is happening wherever you are, what you've learned, your observations, and the development as we speak. This is day two. Give us a feel of what is happening, Kayode.
Okay, so we are currently at the Lekki toll gate, where where it's not part of the toll gate is particularly not part of the designated venues where this protest, the End Bad Governance protest, is supposed to take place. But we found out that people gathered here yesterday, to protest, and we are here this morning to observe, to take a look at what is going on. And getting here this morning, we found out that the place has been seemingly peaceful. Protesters are not gathered here. There's nothing going on here. But one thing we can tell you is that there is heavy presence of security operatives right here. Right here to my left, we can see the Hilux vehicles of several Hilux vehicles of the police, parked at strategic positions. And to my right also, you have about 2 or 3 Black Marias, you have Hilux vans, and several security operatives standing on guard, expecting and anticipating that in case any form of violence or anybody shows up expecting or pretending to be one of the protesters, they can put such situations under control. But I must also let you know that on our way down here, we took a look at, situation of the state from the mainland, so from the island, from Broad Street down to Civic Center, down to this point. And we can tell you authoritatively that things are seemingly peaceful, things are calm. In fact, people have started going about their businesses. Those who could not come out yesterday, to carry out their business, to engage in means of livelihood, have started doing that as of this morning. People have started opening their shops. In fact, I can tell you that some companies have started resuming. So some companies have resumed. Workers are already resuming at work, going to do their daily activities. That's what we have for you at this point.
All right, Kyle, it's interesting to know that businesses are gradually, coming up and then life is coming back to the street of Lagos. But I also want to know, compared to yesterday, as regards the protesters, are you saying you haven't seen any of the protesters inside, even if they are not at Lekki toll gate? maybe at Marina or any other location, they are not inside. I would like you to confirm if you haven't seen any of the protesters and from what you're learning from the field.
Protest is not happening. On the island, protest is not happening. You see, it's a case of different strokes for different folks. On the island, it looks like people have agreed. There is an agreement, there is an understanding that we are not protesting. We want peace. So people are not coming out to protest. But you cannot say the same for those on the mainland. On the mainland, people are protesting. That's where you have majority of the black spot, where people have, where it has been highlighted or earmarked that people are protesting or people want to protest. You know, from areas like Ketu, Ikeja, Agor, and all the other areas on the mainland. People want to come out and protest. They want to, you know, they want to vent. They want the government to understand that there's economic hardship. There's a lot of increase in the price of food. There's fuel scarcity. There's increase. You can't even get to buy the fuel. You understand? But on the island, you find out that filling stations are already open, you know, to serve Nigerians who want to patronize them. So on the island, like I
now
said
that
before,
you've said that some businesses are opening and filling stations inclusive are already opening, seeming like normal life is returning. In terms of patronage, have you had a chance to speak to people that are open, the businesses that are open, if they started receiving patronage?
okay, we've not been able to do that, but from our observation, things are going peacefully. Customers are approaching the vendors to get what they need to get, and the vendors are out there ready to carry out the needed services. That's from our observation for this morning, which is opposed to what happened yesterday. Yesterday, as of this time, businesses were shut down on the island and on the mainland.
Coyote, we would get back to you for more reports later on. Thank you. Here with us is Sam Orovwuje, who is a public policy expert and looking at the developing situation across the country. Now, Coyote has talked about how normalcy is gradually returning to Lagos Island and some other parts of the island, but he's not very sure of what the situation is at the mainland, being that protests, the designated areas for the protests are around the mainland, and so you might find protesters and protests going on in the mainland. But so far, this is day 2 into the protest tagged End Bad Governance. What's your view on the situation so far? The way the protesters have been able to convene together, the conduct of security personnel so far in Lagos State.
Thank you very much indeed. Blessing is a fundamental responsibility of citizens, as it were, to protest. They have the constitutional mandate. But what is important is that while you protest, you don't get violent in what you do. You don't attack public infrastructure, which incidentally belongs to the citizen. So far in Lagos, it has been peaceful to a very large extent, in the sense that we've not had a report of violence. But the reporter on the feed, the point is just made, is from a particular location that was known for a previous protest. And maybe based on experience, nothing happened in that environment. So to be too early in the day to say that the process is essentially peaceful, because this is just a locational report at the moment. But where maybe if you have other reports later in the day, maybe Coyote will get to some other point, and when we get the report, we'll be able to make a general judgment. But the appeal here is that citizens have the right to protest, but don't get violent. You can express your grievances in a manner that does not jeopardize public peace. I think that's what is critical. But then the plight of the people on the other hand, must be looked into by the government. Truly speaking, there's hunger in the land, and government must look at the deeper insight and the voice of the people that they are leading and see how they can recalibrate the process in terms of the difficulties, particularly with fuel subsidy removal and the energy subsidy removal that has had a very difficult impact on the citizens. So, but those who are in the field, you can make your point, you can articulate your views, but don't get violent so that we don't undermine public peace.
All right, taking a clue from what our correspondent, the reporter gave us, he has gone around the island from Marina down to Lekki toll gate. You would have expected day two more turnout and, more crowd as regards protest and all that. But with the station report has given us as regards that location, which we could understand that of Lekki toll gate because of the history attached to that place. But what do you see playing out on the second day compared to yesterday, where the whole thing was at the peak? Of course, it's too early to conclude. Just like yesterday, started like this, and gradually towards the end of the day, you see the protest building up. But what do you see playing out? People are going about their normal businesses. Gradually, businesses are coming up, And then, what do you make of this development? The second day that you will have expected that this will get to the highest level, and this war so is expected to last for 10 days. What does that suggest to you, secondly?
For me, the point has to be made. Essentially, a greater majority of Nigerians are in the informal sector. What that means is that most of their businesses are done on daily basis. Therefore, their daily sustenance is dependent on their ability to come out to do their businesses. So from that perspective, you can see that there's an urge to come out so that they can earn some living. And I think yesterday may have been a very difficult day for some people who couldn't have access to some of the things they do on a daily basis. On the other hand, like you mentioned, it will be too early in the day to make an informed judgment on what is happening in the field until we have some feelers from the reporters so that we know we cannot just make a conclusive judgment on one aspect of the city. And I'm sure when we're able to get some reports from the mainland, then we'll be able to speak to the issues more specifically. But essentially, people live by the day. And once a day is not optimally used, then the livelihood of some of those people are in jeopardy. Therefore, they will always find a means to come out for their source of livelihood.
All right, talking about yesterday when the protest began, recall that there are designated areas for the protest stated by the ruling, the court ruling, where the protest was okayed, but there were designated areas for the protest. Now, in Lagos State, in some parts of the island yesterday, when a crew went out, situation was observed where some protesters who attempted to protest around the Lagos Island were tear gassed by security operatives, stating that this area, the Lagos Island area, is not part of the approved designated area for protest. Later on, if my producer has that clip, we would refer to that. But in the conduct of the protest so far, could that be part of the reason why on the Lagos Island and in other parts of the island today, protesters are not seen? What's your take on the adherence to the court ruling in regards to the designated areas for protest?
For me, fundamentally, if you look at that judgment to a very large extent, in my personal opinion, I don't think that was a proper thing to do on the part of the government. The government has a responsibility to protect citizens. So if people were protesting, what the police needed to do in the first instance was to provide a protection mechanism that sustained a peaceful protest without recourse to damaging public property. So when you confine people to specific places, I don't think that was a desirable thing on the part of government. It's a legitimate right for people to protest, as it were, but it's a responsibility of the government to chart a way when people are marching on the streets, the police are in their front, on their side, so that whatever demand that they are making to government, those voices can be heard. But when you stifle voices, then it becomes very difficult, because if you postpone a day where people can ventilate their anger and you are pushing it a day where you may not have control, then become very difficult to manage. So I use this opportunity in terms of call to duty that the police should find a way to protect citizens while this protest is ongoing, and they should not use certain elements like tear gas, bullets, whatever it is, to push down the citizens. I don't think that's a constitutional mandate. But on the other hand, citizens who are protesting must equally conduct themselves in a manner that does not jeopardize public peace. So it should be a win-win situation for everybody. These are protests. These are the legitimate demand of citizens. So government has a responsibility. On the other hand, government should not push the citizens to the end in a way that they can react that will jeopardize public safety. So we need to balance the responsibility in terms of the responsibility of the states to protect citizens and citizens to behave in a responsible manner.
All right, before we go to the impact of the protest on businesses or the economy, let's look at the demands from the protesters. The number one on the list is that the government should revert petrol pump price to ordinary per liter. How realistic is that?
For me, I think that is not realistic in my personal view. What the demand should be is that government should be more accountable and transparent in the way the subsidy gains are managed to assuage the fear of citizens, whether these monies are not diverted into public hand. Going back to 100 naira is not realistic based on the rate of inflation, based on global pricing for petroleum products. So I think when we place demands, we must be realistic in those demands. That is not, in my view, sustainable. We have come this way, and the challenge the past government has always talked about was subsidy. Now that it has been removed, to what extent can we make major milestones in terms of the benefits to citizens? Therefore, if citizens are not seeing the gain, the government has a responsibility to be accountable in terms of the savings, in terms of how these resources have been deployed for the improvement of public infrastructure, the amount of money that now go to state government. So the focus should not even be on the federal government alone. Subnational government, particularly governors and chairmen of local government, equally have a stake in the way things are done in the country. But even if you look at the percentage earning of the federal government, by the time you take 1% stabilization fund, another 1% for ecological fund, what even go to the federal government comes to about 49 or 48 point something percent, where the remaining goes to the various tiers of government. Thankfully, the autonomy of local government has come to stay, and let's see how productive chairmen of local government will use some of these funds for the development of their local council. So that first demand, in my personal view, is not legitimate, is not reasonable, and I think the demand should be accountability and transparency on the gains made from the removal of fuel subsidy and energy. There's some improvement in energy supply in terms of some areas in Lagos in particular. So there's some gain in that area, even though where people are paying paying so much money to get electricity supply. But then you can see the gain in terms of the hours of electricity that are made available, and that in the long run will improve small and medium enterprises.
We'll come to how this protest is impacting businesses, but the clip where protesters were tear gassed yesterday by security operatives in a bid to disperse them from unapproved areas is ready. Let's Watch. Okay, there we have it. I believe that today will be better in terms of conduct of the protesters and even security operatives themselves. But looking outside of Lagos, in other parts of the country, particularly in the northern region, there have been pockets of violence situation that have even resulted to destruction of properties of individuals, other businesses, government inclusive. How did it get to this point? A protest that was meant to be peaceful, how do you think it deteriorated to the situation in those parts of the country?
First and foremost, you must look at the cultural differences in terms of the way the country is structured, particularly in the north, where you have a large army of people that are out of school. And those people are easily engineered into those protests, and they don't have control in terms of their sensibility. And I think that's why what happened in those places may have happened. On the other hand, maybe the police and the security agency has an overbearing influence in terms of the control mechanism that they put in place, and people were reactive in a manner that resulted to some of those destruction that took place in those areas. But the appeal here is that if you destroy public infrastructure, at the end of the day, it's the public that will suffer. So the appeal there is that you can protest legitimately, but don't resort to violence by destroying either individual infrastructure or public infrastructure, because at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers' money that will be used to reconstruct those places. So we appeal to subnational government to see how they can do some critical stakeholder meeting by using various layers of influences within the state, whether traditional rulers, opinion leaders, community leaders, to find a way to reach out to those people who may likely go violent, that it is their legitimate right to protest, but then violence does not resolve any issue.
All right, let's revert to the demands from the protesters. If you find the number one to be unrealistic, maybe the second one will be realistic, which is to combat insecurity and hunger in the land. Then there's a rider to that: close all IDP camps and resettle the campers. How realistic is the issue of tackling insecurity and hunger in the land, and then to ensure that those who are in IDP camps are being resettled?
I think number two demand is realistic, is appropriate in my view, particularly from the perspective of the negative impact of insecurity on businesses and public safety and peace. And this has negatively impacted on food security as well. So if you look at the various dimensions, the overlapping dimensions of what is triggering poverty and hunger, then insecurity is a major issue that needs to be settled by the government. Therefore, in terms of the security architecture that has been put in place, to what extent can security agencies find a way to deal with criminality, kidnapping, and possibly in the north where Boko Haram is ravaging? So if you're able to put security in place, then the issue of hunger will be minimized, because people don't have the capacity to go to their farm. Therefore, is affecting food security, which is one of the cry from citizens that there's hunger in the land, which is true. Because if you have a multi-dimensional poverty scenario where over 89.8% of citizens are living below the poverty line, then there's a major challenge. And government need to look at these issues critically. And the social intervention that we often call palliative is not sustainable. Where trailers of rice went into some states, I've not seen one. I have not seen anybody who has mentioned to me that they even got 1 kg of rice. So these are some of the things that should be agitating the minds of citizens. And the government has a clear responsibility of how, even if they want to do social intervention on how to reach the people, rather than this government public information management that does not really get down to the people. So if you are giving 2,000 bags of rice to a particular state, how do you distribute those things? You can use independent logistic companies, have a database of people who are in that range that you want to deal with, and let this item get to the people. And that is one of the major problems in terms of strategic management in the public sector, where more often than not, you do what they call reactive information management system rather than being proactive in trying to see, okay, there's a problem. How do we deal with this? This has always been the way we deal with this problem. Why don't we outsource this into independent logistic company that can distribute these things house to house? And this happened during the COVID era in the US, where food were taken to the doorstep of people. So these are some of the things, and that's why data management is critical. And government should find a way to give people that has the core competencies in managing aspects of governance, so that this kind of protest will be reduced minimally. But government has a responsibility to listen to voices of citizens, to understand the conversation and the reality. And what I expect from leaders, particularly at federal, subnational, and local government, is that they should approach those protesters and speak to them on the challenges, on the prospects of how there will be improvement, whether in 6 months, 10 months, and all that, so that citizens can have a fair deal of some of the challenges that the government face on the other hand.
Talking about having some form of dialogue or reasoning with the protesters at this point, you know that before the protest actually began, there were efforts made by the government to actually discourage protests, a way of appealing to the protesters via traditional rulers, and there were protests. There were anti-protest protests. Let's put it that way. There were protests that were done to discourage the protests even before these protests began. There was some form of sensitization appeals done to discourage the protests before now. Now, what do you make of that situation where the government had to wait for it to get to this situation before that feedback to the people on what government is doing to alleviate the sufferings of the masses, before it gets to the point where citizens take to the streets to have peaceful protest, before it got to the situation where some citizens became violent? What should have been the plan, the action of government before it got to this point? What are the lessons to learn from this?
Yeah, before the lessons to be learned from this scenario is that the government information mechanisms or machinery is very faulty. Let's not make pretension about this. Where public information managers, more often than not, find a way to do what you call propaganda management without looking at the issues. So the civic engagement strategy on the part of government has been very faulty, and I think the government, particularly the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture, should do more of citizen engagement before crisis, and they should put a pre-warning mechanism in place on how to react to some of this. So a feedback mechanism in terms of citizen demand must be aggregated by government, and this should go into the Federal Executive Council as part of the issues that they discuss. What are the perceptions? What are the feelings of citizens? So you don't go there having political consideration alone, and they can make noise, they can protest, After a while, when they are hungry, they can go back. I think governance has moved beyond that. So the advice and the counsel here is that government needs to rework its public information management system. And this idea, with due respect to those who are in the media space, where government more often than not appoint journalists as media aides, which is just one element of public information management. The public relation aspects and reputation management aspects are undermined. Just looking at shunning our press releases and all that, the government need to look at that space. Citizen engagement, very, very critical. They need to fill the citizens by doing some surveys from time to time and see what, and they can come that this is our survey, this is what the citizens, and address the citizens even before the group for protest. So the lesson is that this idea of inviting people to Abuja to appeal to people are not really good channels of communication. Rather than bringing those traditional rulers to Abuja, they should be advised to have civic engagement or town hall meetings with their subjects or citizens within their domain, with a view to say, this is the position of government, these are the challenges, these are the milestones, this is where we want to be, rather than calling people to Abuja and you have a divide and rule kind of mechanism in managing public dissent. I think we need to look at that more critically. The lesson is that there should be more citizen engagement, and the government should come down from the height, because they were part of citizens before they had the opportunity, and they are elected. And they should remember that every 4 years, it will be the turn of citizens to place a demand. But then, because of the way recruitment is done into government, that is still difficult to manage.
All right, the hashtag for this protest is End Bad Governance. And if you look at the demands from the protesters, what they feel will also help in restructuring governance in Nigeria. Let's look at the three of them that are related to this hashtag, and I would like you to react to them at once. It's the first one talks about children of public office holders must attend public schools in the country. Then the other one talks about government must patronize made in Nigerian goods. Then the transition to unicameral legislature. Now, this, according to the protesters, will help good governance in Nigeria. I would like you to react to these three demands.
I think 1, 2, 3 demand. No, 1, 2. I will speak to that. They just mentioned the third one. Maybe I should start from the third one.
Okay.
Unicameral legislative is nice, but then you need a constitutional framework to change that. So it is the responsibility of citizens to put pressure on their legislators to get a bill to change that. And I think that might be difficult because they are asking people that they should get out of their job. So that would be difficult. But I think it's desirable in terms of when you look at the cost of governance. Number one, yes, we have issues with bad governance, and we have spoken to that with the questions that you asked earlier. What are the key issues? There's what you call open democracy or open governance. Where things are done in an opaque manner, then it gives room for suspicion. So therefore, the government must be transparent first and foremost, and must be accountable to citizens. So it's not just sufficient to publish FAQ allocations. When these are published, to what extent the various ministry, departments, and agencies of government use this budgetary provision in the right manner that will impact the citizens. So the government must see how they can improve on transparency and accountability. The second one, critical, very important, government must patronize made in Nigerian products. That's the only way you can sustain economic growth. In addition to the amount of disposable income. Once productivity is enhanced, there will be more disposable income for the citizen, and government will earn more taxes. So I think that is even more critical for me as an individual, that the government must be seen to be patronizing made in Nigerian products. Even government departments must take made in Nigerian products, if we have car manufacturing companies, like the innocents of this world, not advertising for them, they must patronize those companies so that we can save some foreign exchange. And I think this is very critical. So once we're able to do that, the strength of the Naira vis-a-vis the dollar will be positive. Then there will be more productivity at the individual level, which will translate into national productivity and economic prosperity for the citizens will be guaranteed. So issues of protest may become milder, may not be in this kind of situation where there's a breach of public peace and destruction of private and public infrastructure.
How do you react to the demand for children of public officers to attend public schools in Nigeria?
Yes, that again is critical. That means they are making a demand that for you to make all those institutions work, once your kids and what are in those institutions, you have no option than to find a way to sustain those budgetary provision for education. I think to a very large extent, that is in order. But those who have the capacity, as it were, you must balance opinion. There are people who have capacity to send their children that are not necessarily in government or who are in government who may have some heritage funding, maybe from rich backgrounds, so they have estate. If they can afford that and they are not using public fund to send their children to school abroad, I don't think there should be a blanket ban on those who can send their kids abroad.
Right. Still talking about the companies now. Let's get back to them. You're aware that, like we said earlier in the show, that there were some areas in the country where there were violent protests, and some companies or businesses have been made to suffer for it. Now, looking at that and Lagos, because when our team went out yesterday to some parts of Lagos Island, which is the commercial headquarters of Lagos, the popular Balogun market and some like that, it was deserted as though business never existed in those areas. We've been seeing the clips of that now. And the fear of being attacked in those areas may keep some businesses from opening until maybe after a time. Now, there are people who go to the northern parts of the country to buy goods that they sell. There are people who travel to Lagos, to Balogun market specifically to buy goods that they sell in other areas. How do you think this will affect the supply chain at this time, given the current situation?
From 2 days before the crisis, there was already a disruption in the supply chain. So once people don't feel secure to move from one point to the other, then it's likely to affect the supply chain and an entire disruption in the business processes. So like Lagos Island, as you mentioned, Balogun, which is a traditional nerve center in terms of commerce and trading, was deserted yesterday. So by implication, it has a negative impact for supply chain and for those who even live on a daily basis. In that regard, therefore, it will have a negative impact on the economy till we resume back to normalcy. And when we look at the capitalization on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the money market lending rates and all that, at the end of this protest, be able to speak to the issues of the amount of money that was lost to this crisis. I don't like to speculate with figures. So those sector that has the responsibility, particularly money market and the capital market, be able to give us the exact loss that was made during this protest.
All right. Insurance is for unforeseen circumstances such as protests. There's businesses that have suffered loss due to looting, burning of properties, and other business equipment. What's your advice for them?
Insurance is to bring you to comfort. That's the concept of insurance originally. But I'm afraid if there's an insurance that does not take cognizance of this element of protest when they want to demand a claim. So if you do what they call extension in your insurance policy, that take cognizance of the fact that if there's a protest and by implication, I have to suffer some losses based on the protest, and you put that into the policy framework, then you have a claim. But if you don't have that extension, when you insure your property, sometimes the insurance business do not take cognizance of public protests. But unless you understand that and you put a little extension in terms of if I suffer loss as a result of protest, then I can make some claim. It's only on that basis that you can get claim. But for those industrial park that was attacked in Kano, I'm sure that some level of insurance will be provided, and they will take cognizance because of the volume of investment in those. But for small and medium enterprise, I'm afraid, even where people don't even believe in basic insurance, with the concept, let's leave it for God, that might be very difficult to manage.
Still on the issue of business, let's look at the impact of the protest on revenue now, on the part of government, and also for businesses and individuals. Most importantly, for people who live on daily wages. What will be the impact of this protest if it lingers? The target is to extend this protest for like 10 days, and we're in the second day. Now, if these lingers, what will be the impact on government revenue for businesses, individuals, and those who live on daily wages?
The government is losing money, for sure. Individuals, businesses are equally losing money. The idea of the protest, first and foremost, is to end hunger. And where people are not active economically, then their source of livelihood is already jeopardized. To that extent, the protests will encourage more hunger. That's the way I look at it. So those who are on the streets must balance the interests of the informal sector and see how they can push those voices to government and reduce the time they want to spend to see how their voices are heard. Because the more the days, the more danger it portends for a lot of people. And hopefully, I think we don't want criminals to hijack the scenario, because it will be the first set of people who can even get a livelihood, and they will resort to hijacking the process by looting. So the appeal here, once again, is that protest is legitimate, is constitutional, but then we must strike a balance. And I think, in my view, for this past 2 days, it's early in the day, I think the message is passed to government, because once they have a dashboard where they see their revenue on daily basis, and yesterday and today, it's almost zero. And I'm sure that they'll be worried as well, and see how they can use informal diplomacy to reach out to various citizens to engage and see how they can call off the protests.
Now, talking about the protest continuing or not continuing, we have a team currently at Ojota. They'll be giving us live reports. We'll join them soon. But before we do that, a situation happened yesterday at Abuja. There was contention as to what the court ruling actually stated. So the convener of the protest in Abuja, who happens to be a lawyer, the CP was of the opinion that the protesters should converge in the stadium. They should be at the main bowl of the stadium. But the opinion or the response of the convener was that the injunction says they should be at the stadium. They are at the vicinity, or they were yesterday at the vicinity of the stadium. So there was contention as to the specification of the ruling. Did the ruling actually say be in the main bowl or be at the stadium, which does not actually say be at the gate, be at the main bowl, but just be at the stadium? And he said, the convener actually said that he did not actually see the court injunction. So, which brings me to the question of, if an injunction was given to guide protesters and to guide security operatives that are to stand as guard over protest activities, should it not have been in public domain, so that those who protest or those who be on the street are guided by the specifications of the ruling, to avoid a conflict between protesters and security operatives?
Blessing, I mentioned in our earlier conversation that the idea of having court processes to stop protests fundamentally is wrong. The responsibility of the state, as it were, is for welfare and the protection of citizens. So I don't think first and foremost whether those injunctions were actually done, who has the responsibility to put it in the public domain. Since we don't have access to those documents, we should not dwell on whether the convener were right, whether the commissioner of police for the Federal Capital Territory was right. But what I think was wrong was having injunction to restrict people to specific places. Protests are legitimate demand. But what we should have done as a police command was to put people in front of those who are protesting, put people by their side, and you will let them to express themselves so that you protect them first and foremost, and not using unorthodox means to disperse the people, which will now agitate and bring about a negative reaction that will lead. I understand that a police officer was killed somewhere. Not too sure. I think that came from the IGP, so we can speak to that since it's coming from the highest level of the command. I think, again, it has to do with information management. And this military mentality that has come into democracy must find a way to find people to move away from those tendencies. Let people protest, provide the means for them to legitimately make those protests rather than reading threats to citizens. I think that's not the best way. They should see engage, do a lot of civic engagement. I expect the commissioners of police in various states and where to go into those places to engage with citizens rather than this forth and back of whether they are injunction, whether the injunction restrict people to a particular place.
All right, I learned our correspondent in standing by in Ojota. Let's get back to our correspondent who will give us a live update of the development taking place in Ojota as regards the protest. Can you give us a first-hand account of what is happening? Kayode in Ojota, I learned you are in Ojota now, which is one of the major locations for this protest. Give us what you from the protesters and people on ground as regards the latest development on the protest.
All right, Femi, thank you very much. We are standing here at the Gani Fawemi Memorial Park, and all around us, what we can see protesters gathered. Some are inside the park, there are others outside, and then we have every presence of security operatives. From information that we can gather, there is a confusion as to who are those actually protesting and who are those not protesting. Some people are saying that hoodlums have hijacked the protest, and some are saying that some people have been paid, to destabilize the process, and confuse those who are actually protesting, saying that they should not protest or they should keep their calm. But, in the midst of this all, we have people standing, just looking and trying to gather or to know what actually is happening. As much as everybody is gathered here, there's serious agitation.
All right, Kayode, it seems as if, please correct me if I'm wrong, the protest in Ojota is not well coordinated as it ought to be, or one would have expected. Then I would like us to give us a picture of the state of the park itself. I learned the place is weedy and might not be safe for protesters to get into that park to have this kind of protest. Give us a picture of the state of the park and what is playing out around moving into that park, since it's one of the location marked for this kind of protest.
Can you take your question again? I can barely hear you.
The report we got yesterday as regards the state of that park is the place is weedy and it's not safe for people to gather in that park for protest, for the fear of reprisals and whatever could be of danger to their safety. I am saying if you give us a picture of the state of the park, has that been addressed? Then it appears the protest is not well organized that one would have expected. What could be responsible for this?
Okay, so I can tell you that everything looks a little bit safe here. There's nothing is actually going out of hand, out of place. You know, like I said before, we have the Lagos State Neighborhood Security Watch. They are present. We have the police operatives here. Okay, those are the people I can see right now, and they are much on ground. You know, so they, from what I can see, they can douse any tension, you know, that is coming from anywhere. They can submerge any formation of trouble or chaos. But what is happening currently is that it looks like there's a misunderstanding between those who are protesting. You know, it feels like there's a discord, there's a dissonance between those who actually want the government to hear them and those who are trying to kill their voices. So as it is now, everybody is just trying to actually get their stand, you know, to decide whether they actually want this protest to keep going or whether they want to stop it here today. But as you can see behind me, there are agitations. People are arguing as to what are we doing? Why are we here? What's actually going on? But when you talk about security, security is good. Everybody's safe. There's no chaos.
Your way to Ojota and even around the Ojota axis, you must have seen several businesses and shops. In the midst of this agitation, do you perceive a sense of fear on the part of the business owners? Businesses open this morning at Ojota axis.
A blessing. So on our way down, we found out that on the mainland, not much businesses open, not many shops opened. You know, it feels like people shut down actually, or things are actually shut down. Filling stations are not working. The few ones that you have working. Can you
Very
hear me?
much. Well done, Coyote and the team out there. Please be safe, and we'll get more updates from the team as time goes on. Meanwhile, the show will come to a close, but you can stay tuned to SOUQ News, watch the news, and watch other programs so that you can be updated on current happenings. Thank you very much, Sam Orovwuje, for being with us or in the Friday edition of Early Exchange.
My pleasure. Thank you, Blessing.
All right, Nigerians, we understand that it is the constitutional right of Nigerians to protest, but please let us do this peacefully, and we appeal to security operatives to be civil as best as possible so that the situation does not degenerate and the violent situation that has happened in some part of the country does not spread to other parts. We appeal to individuals as well to be vigilant. If you see something, please be quick to say something. It'll be well with Nigeria. That is our prayer, and that is why here in Early Exchange we say good Nigeria. I am Blessing H. The show returns on Monday, 8 a.m. West African time. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms at SOUQ News TV. Leave a comment and please inform us of what the situation is like at your end, even as we are in day 2 of the nationwide protests. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, Early Exchange is wrapping up for this week, but the conversation continues on our social media platform, and that's also an opportunity for you to give us a first-hand account of what is happening in your area as regards the protest and the development. Just go on all our social media platforms at SOUQ News TV to share your view and give us an update of what is happening in your environment. Don't forget, Early Exchange will always return bigger and better. Let's ensure that we are safe out there and ensure that good governance returns to our nation. I am Femi Ayodele. Thanks for watching. Have a nice weekend.
Daily exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.